Syria has confirmed its first case of Covid-19 after weeks of unconfirmed reports that the virus had reached the country. UN officials and humanitarian workers have warned an outbreak could be catastrophic to the country's war-ravaged health system. The Health Minister, Nadine Dorries, has revealed she will return to Parliament today. MPs debating the government's coronavirus bill. The MP's been self-isolating at home after being diagnosed with Covid-19 earlier this month. I think her mother had it as well, though not seriously. Nadine Dorries tweeted these words: "On my way back to the Department of Health and Parliament for the passing of the coronavirus bill. Good to be back in the saddle and able to play my part to help our Prime Minister, Cabinet and the scientists who are working around the clock to keep us safe. And #Save Lives."
A full lockdown has been ordered in New Zealand as part of efforts to contain the virus there. All non-essential services, schools and offices will be shut for 4 weeks. Over the weekend, the number of coronavirus cases in the country more than doubled. The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, said the measures were the most restrictive in New Zealand's history, but would save thousands of lives. Australia has shut down non-essential services as cases of the virus there pass 1,600. Authorities have denied entry to a cruise ship off the west coast, carrying hundreds of passengers who've complained of respiratory illness. It comes days after another ship docked in Sydney, allowing thousands of people to disembark. Dozens of them later tested positive for the infection. The US has reported the third highest number of infections of any country. President Trump has announced additional emergency medical help for New York, Washington State and California, but Congress has failed so far to agree on measures to support the economy. The Federal Reserve has warned of tremendous hardship and announced unprecedented steps to support American households and companies with credit.
On the coronavirus in London this afternoon, we start with staff on the London Underground who say they're furious that parts of the network remain crowded despite the public being told to limit travel to essential journeys only. One union boss has said crowding reported by members this morning made social distancing impossible. Here's our transport correspondent, Tom Edwards.
The Central Line extremely busy this morning, many unable to stay 2 metres apart from other passengers. Caris Barton, a heart failure nurse, filmed her journey into work. She questioned if it was critical for so many people to be using the tube. This was the view from the driver's cab on the Victoria line just before 7 this morning. This was Leytonstone. Transport unions are furious. Some tube staff say too many services have been cut. OK, we're at London St Pancras now. Nobody here. This is one of the biggest interchanges in London. Probably 10, 20 passengers. Some people are listening. This was Oxford Circus, and at King's Cross these buses were nearly empty. London's transport is struggling with this new reality. There are now calls for businesses to be prosecuted if they're forcing non-critical staff to go to work.
What should people do and not do, crucially? Let's start with shopping.
Yeah, starting with shops, just look at the scenes from the last 24 hours. Some of it looks absolutely crazy when you bear in mind everything we know. The advice is stay 2 metres apart, go shopping only when it is necessary. And yet, look at this, look at the scenes. Now some of the stores are putting in what they call distancing measures. M&S introducing customer limits and floor markings. Morrison's installing clear screens at checkouts. Aldi's already done that. Sainsbury's is trying to get them quickly. Tesco with similar measures. These scenes just can't go on. But it's not just in the shops. Just want to go straight into this, which is the outdoors. The good weather has brought a lot of people out to exercise. Look, they're sharing equipment in the park there. Again, it's the same rule. 2 metres distant, and experts say, please do not congregate in the open air. The fresh air does not protect you.
Just within the past few minutes, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has delivered a message to the nation from inside Downing Street. He has announced that with immediate effect, people will only be allowed to leave their homes for very limited purposes. He says that the police will have the power to enforce these stricter rules. Let's just recap you. I think it's important to do that on what these new restrictions are here in the UK. Well, people will only be allowed to leave their homes for these following reasons. Shopping for basic necessities as infrequently as possible. One form of exercise a day. You can do it alone or with other members of your household, your direct household. You can leave your house for any medical need or to provide care for a vulnerable person, and you are allowed to travel to and from work, but this is only where this is absolutely necessary and it cannot be done from home. Now, Spain wants to ramp up its level of testing, and in fact it's received 640,000 test kits from China and from South Korea. The first people to be getting them will be healthcare workers who are at a daily risk of infection. 1 in 10 of all confirmed cases in Spain are healthcare workers. Well, Pope Francis has been praising them for all their efforts.
I admire them. They teach me how to commit. Doctors, nurses, volunteers who have to sleep on stretchers because there are no more beds in the hospitals and they can't even go out of their homes. That is the life they are leading. I like to use an expression, the saints are next door.
So the military now in Spain is on the streets trying to help enforce that lockdown, and soldiers are undertaking various other tasks as well. This is them on the streets of Barcelona, and they are there in fact building a shelter for the homeless. Up to 1,000 homeless people will now be able to isolate themselves in hygienic conditions in those facilities built by the military. The police are also checking that people stick to the rules. So Germany has now more than 28,000 cases of Covid-19, but the death rate compared to Italy is much lower. 118 people have died in Germany. Come to the United States, because just in the past few minutes we've had this update from the White House, a spokesperson saying that Donald Trump, the president, has signed an executive order to prevent hoarding, one of the ongoing issues throughout this crisis. Price gouging, so artificially increasing prices for supplies needed to fight this disease. So update from what the Trump administration is doing. Earlier, the Senate also failed for a second time to pass an economic rescue plan, which is worth more than $1.4 trillion. There are major differences, of course, between the Democrats and Republicans over what should be included in that particular piece of legislation. Well, while the hospitals are full, the streets, as you can see, are empty. And this was New York City today, usually bustling, absolutely rammed full of people. Now you can see it is practically a ghost town. A state of emergency has been in effect for the past 16 days, and it is having a drastic impact on everything, even the financial centre. Here's New York Stock Exchange just a little bit earlier on. So for the first time in 228 years, it opened without its trading floor. It's of course to protect employees from the spread of Covid-19. Stock trading is continuing, but it is being done electronically. Well, in California, officials have constructed hospitals to restrict testing because of a shortage of medical supplies. The first military hospital ship has been dispatched in the state. The U.S. naval ship called the Mercy has nearly 900 staff on board to help treat non-coronavirus patients, and that's to free up space in onshore hospitals. This is heading to Los Angeles. There's another ship that is on its way to New York.